that said, let's continue. So today's session is stakeholders management, 101 PM, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But before we start with the topic, I would like to introduce myself a little bit. My name is Jorge, and I'm part of Product People. I'm a product management one, and I've been working here for more or less almost 1 year. My background comes from business, but I did the transition and I started working here at Product People. And since then, I've worked in different products between B2C, B2B, and I learned a lot, I would say, and I'm very happy that we are still doing great things here at Product People. To give you a little bit of context in case you are new, I'm going to explain who we are, right? Because that's an important thing. Probably is the first time that you joined to this call, so let me give you a little bit of context. So what we do at Product People is basically we help companies to achieve the best, to discover and deliver products faster, right? We apply different product management techniques with help of from product managers and associates and senior product managers to help those companies to achieve the best version of their product. This is not the only thing that we are trying to do for the community. We also give, as you can see here in this meeting, events. We do lectures. We provide with product cases, and we also provide different tools so people that may love product management as us can learn, from those resources. But our main activity is to help companies all around Europe to improve their products. And our way of working is more or less starting 3 months, where we try to onboard fast, so we can help them to achieve outcomes and results as soon as we can, as you can see, around 3 months more or less. So, oops. This one is not, I wasn't prepared. So now that you know about me, you know about the top, you know about the company and what we do and how we try to push the product management community in Europe. Please let me introduce Viktoria Korzhova, is Vice President of Product here at Product People. She has been working with us since the day one, let's say, and she encourages and tries to teach to every person here at Product People how to be a great product manager. So that's it. Please, I pass the torch. Thanks, Viktoria, for starting the lecture. And now is your turn.
Thank you, Jorge. Hello, everyone. Wherever you're watching us right now, is it Zoom? Is it stream on YouTube, LinkedIn, or maybe a recording? Welcome to the talk of today. And I would like to take over the screen sharing so that I can start sharing my presentation. Great, and let's now see, hopefully everything works. As Jorge mentioned, I'll talk about stakeholder management, the ideal case we want to achieve, or at least strive to get there, and what is more common maybe is the bad and sometimes even ugly. As also have been mentioned before, I'm VP Product at Product People, the company that Jorge is coming from as well, and he told you a bit more about what we do. I had the chance to work with a lot of different clients of ours and had a lot of fun, and also learned a lot of tricks and special situations with stakeholders, because each new project, there is a new set of stakeholders that we need to communicate well. So my story here today will be based on all the years of product experience I have, and also my previous experience that is coming from academia, where I also had some challenging stakeholders like my scientific supervisor and some other very busy professors. Professors are always busy, and that makes it challenging as well. Oops, this is the first part. So the bad and the ugly. And I think if you are a product manager or in some position that is close to product management in its skills and requirements, you probably already had some difficult situations with stakeholders where they were not very happy or not happy at all, and it feels like this is never going to be an agreement. I have listed some of the common situations I have seen, but also would invite you to please write in the chat what happened to you with stakeholders. What were the challenges? Wherever you're watching us, be it YouTube or LinkedIn or Zoom, feel free to write a couple sentences or just one sentence in the chat. Jorge will be able to also to read to me some of those. And while you're typing, I'm gonna also read the examples that I thought about. A very common one is that stakeholders keep throwing new ideas at you, and they demand and expect that it will be immediately implemented. If this is not done, then stakeholders can complain to your manager, often just directly write an email without not even letting you know that they're unhappy, just complain and tell your manager they're not doing their job correctly. Other cases that stakeholders give tasks directly to engineers. So instead of talking to you as a product manager who would help create scope for the team, they go to engineers and say, do this, do that, or just put tickets in your Jira board, and this makes the engineers very unhappy, but also prevents you from doing the best work. Stakeholders come to the meetings and seemingly just to poke holes in your suggestions. So whatever you bring up, they say, this is not good, this is not great, and then they just complain and always disagree. Or maybe even the worst situation, they just don't come to the meeting. So you have set up the meeting to align with them, discuss certain topic, but they don't come, they ignore it. Seeing some other topics from our chat, stakeholders giving you whiplash with changes in direction back and forth. Yeah, and sometimes they tell you, yeah, we will do this, and next time you have a meeting, they tell you the opposite, right? All these crazy things happen. Are there any other interesting notions from the chat, Jorge?
Yeah, I have a comment from YouTube that is that they'll mention is setting boundaries, for instance. This is a very common problem that someone from YouTube said that they have like they don't know how to,
So stakeholders, I guess there are many different problems that can be around boundaries, right? On one hand, stakeholders might push strong boundaries on what you do and not allow you to be engaged in certain topics and just fence you out with. On the other hand, maybe the other side, like they have no boundaries, right? And they get into all the areas that you wouldn't expect them to interfere. For example, interacting directly with engineers and requesting tasks from engineers. So overall, it feels like they're not really product manager friends, right? So, and then you think, okay, keep your friends closer, keep your enemies even closer than friends. So maybe that's the approach we should do. In a way, I agree. In a way, you definitely should keep stakeholders close. At the same time, I don't think that stakeholders are our enemies. They are a very important part of any product management work. And the trick to have a more healthy relationships is to go through certain stages of development of these relationships. Let's look at the secret tactics that I collected throughout my time as a product manager that help you survive and build positive relationship with stakeholders. Jorge, maybe I ask you to mute when you're not talking, just for better audio. Thanks. According to me, there are 4 main stages in how the stakeholder relationship develops. You start from uncharted territory. It's oftentimes when you join a new company or you start working on a new area of the product, you've never interacted with this area before. So all the stakeholders are new to you. That is very natural. So when you're in a new place, naturally, you don't really know yet who's where and what they mean. Unfortunately, this sometimes is the stage where many PMs are stuck for years, and this is not okay. So if you're in uncharted territory, then you cannot proceed to next stages. You cannot really develop good relationships until you understand who your stakeholders are. And we'll talk a bit how this can be done, what framework you can use to support your understanding. Next stage is lost in translation. So you start to understand who your stakeholders are and you try to talk to them, but it seems that you're never aligned. Like there's always some problem. Either you don't share language or things don't happen in the way they're supposed to happen, communication somehow broken. So it's a bit better, at least you know who the stakeholders are and you're trying to communicate to them, but it's not a great communication. However, if you're able to improve it, then you enter a nice stage where things start to work out. Some fresh feelings, let's say, they're positive, things are working out. And you should not be misled by this positive development and think that from now on, you can do everything as you want and things will continue. It's important to continue supporting and developing your relationships in the right way so that you can be happy forever after. And we also will talk about how to actually move from the stage of initially good feelings to actually very stable relationships. And according to these 4 stages, we will talk about 4 different tactical strategic approaches. For the uncharted territory, you first need to start with knowing your enemy. As I said, I don't think the stakeholders are actually enemies, but probably you're starting from this point. For the second stage, you work on devising communication strategies, so understanding how you communicate with the stakeholder that you identified in the first stage. In the third one, you start working on building the relationship and convincing and building trust. And here I have 3 main advice to offer. Let them be heard, use storytelling, and persevere. We'll talk about more details what this means. And in the last one, you need to continue doing all the great work you're doing and also paying attention to some additional things. And then you will be happy forever after. Let's move on to the first one without further ado. So knowing your enemy. Divide and conquer. I called it this way because there is a very good approach that helps you understand who your stakeholders are. You can start by just making a list. So writing down everyone who you think is somehow connected to what you're doing every day, to the product you're developing, people who have reached out to you, people who you told you should be interacting with. So make a list of everyone who comes to your mind. Then map them according to power interest matrix, and then use correct tactics to interact with them accordingly. Let's look at the power interest matrix. Very simple one, has 4 boxes. One axis indicates interest from low to high. So how much is this particular stakeholder interested in the product you're developing and in the results of this development? And the other one is power. So how much power they have. And this is, of course, very much correlated with kind of position they have. If it's C-level stakeholder, probably they have a lot of power, but sometimes there are also additional information that you should consider. There are people who have maybe not taken very high positions, but have very strong political power in certain companies, and you need to be mindful about this and do not disregard powerful people. If we divide our area into 4 zones, people with highest interest and highest power can be called drivers. So these are those who are pushing you forward and pushing all the initiatives connected to what you're working on forward. There are blockers, people with a lot of power, but very low or no interest in what you're doing. And they might not be doing it on purpose. They might not really block you on purpose, but since they're not really interested in what you're doing, they are not going to support you. If we look at people who have lower power, we can identify defenders. So people who have high interest, they are really supporting what you're doing, but their position doesn't allow that they can have big impact. And then there are people who have neither interest nor actual power, and they are just bystanders in your for your project. Let's have a look at an example. Here I put some imaginary situation for an imaginary product manager, right? The actual situation might vary depending on what product you're working on, what kind of industry it is. It might vary. And also, as I said, there are additional power dynamics that is extra addition to the just ranking inside of the company. So maybe while here I said the CFO, CEO, and CPO have kind of the same power, doesn't mean that in reality it will be like this in your company. Please don't forget about this and be mindful about that. But in this example, a simple one, let's say you're product manager, you're one of several product managers, not too many, so maybe 3 to 5 product managers. They're all reporting directly to the CPO. And in this case, I would say the CPO is definitely very interested in how all the products developed are being developed, right, and how they are moving forward. So CPO is the driver because definitely also the person who has a lot of power. Other C-level people, if they're not involved directly in your product, probably are potential blockers. So they don't have much interest, but they have a lot of power. So if something goes not according to them, they can block you. And if something comes to their plate that they feel is more important, for example, the CEO makes a third-party contract that starts tomorrow, then they might try to interfere with your work and try to take over your engineering team to do something else. Legal is also a very important stakeholder to consider in many cases, because oftentimes when you deal with data, there are some legal questions. Legal usually has no particular interest in anything that the company is developing, rather than just making sure that the company is not getting sued. And for them, being cautious is always the best approach. So while they don't have that much power as CEO, probably, but might depend as well, they might be potential blockers as well. On the defenders are probably people who are directly interacting with your product and interacting with your customers, for example, customer support, and maybe operations if you have some kind of physical part of the product, or their operations that are involved in using the product. For them, it's also very interesting to know how is product developed, and they would like to give you input. At the same time, if you look at the product, maybe operations managers or customer support managers or specialists, they don't have a lot of power. Bystanders are usually other PMs, unless you're working with them directly. They're kind of a little bit interested what you're doing, but as long as it doesn't touch their part of the product, they wouldn't really care. Analytics usually also has no direct interest in what you're working on. While they are helpful, they are providing certain information that's useful for you, they are not really interested in your development. Now, what do we do after we have divided the stakeholders into these groups? We understand that we need to have different approaches for them. For drivers, you want to have a strategy to manage them very closely. So really talk with this person or people a lot, regularly, keep them appraised, but also ask about their opinion and use it. People who are potential blockers, you want to keep satisfied. So you want to make sure that your CEO, for example, in the example I shared, right, is convinced that whatever you're doing is very important. Even if they are not interested, they will not try to take over your team because they are satisfied with the work you're doing. Defenders, you want to keep informed. They are important for you because they are providing useful information and that they are your allies. At the same time, they don't have so much power. So if we compare between drivers and defenders, drivers you want to engage more with than the defenders. And bystanders, probably you don't really need to take any special activities in regards to them. Monitor if they at some point move in one of the other sectors that's possible, then you will have different approaches. But during the staying in monitor in this bystander area, you just monitor. Now, when you understood who your stakeholders are, understood what the groups they are, you can devise communication strategies so that you properly communicate without investing unnecessary time and without annoying people, but keeping them actually happy. And here I want to remind us that communication is not only a meeting, right? Having a call with someone is not the only way to communicate. Surprisingly, even though we moved from the offices and many of us work remote now, still people oftentimes have a bias towards in-person or face-to-face meeting over a call. This is, of course, not very efficient. And if you try to meet with all of your stakeholders, you will invest a lot of time and probably also spend the time that they don't have. Remember that there are many asynchronous communication means, starting from messages. If you're using Slack or Teams or any other tool to send messages, that's already a great way to communicate. And many things can be done via messages. We still have emails, and emails are great for longer pieces of content that you want to share that is not very urgent, but very informative. You can make shared documents, and this is great if you need to have people comment on different parts of the document to provide you specific feedback. And not so often used, but very powerful tool is a video recording. Some things are really difficult to explain with words, and this is when we feel like, yeah, probably we should have a meeting to show, but you don't have to have a meeting. You can also just make a recording. Positive sides of the recording, that usually saves time on both sides. You, the one making recording, are feel like you need to be a bit more efficient because you don't want to record 20-minute video. You want to record maybe 5. And at the same time, the person who is watching the recording can watch it with 1.5 speed, 2x speed, and then be faster done and know what you wanted to say. So having in mind all this, different approaches to communication, here is a potential way how you can arrange your mapping of communications towards our stakeholder matrix. I want to highlight that this is not one-to-one that you should repeat. This is an example based on the logic that I'm going to explain now. Think what would apply the best way in your case. So if we look at stakeholders you need to manage closely, these are the people with whom you probably want to have one-on-ones so that you have a lot of close communication, can have regular discussions, and maybe even weekly one-on-ones is necessary. You want to have some kind of progress board, so the place where this person can go at any time and know where things going. So what's the current state? What happened since you met last? Sometimes maybe this means giving access to the Jira board or Asana board or some other board where things are moving, right? And they can see the progress of the project. And also, even though you're having regular check-ins over calls, I do recommend that you write regular updates to record everything that you discussed. For the stakeholders you want to keep satisfied, you definitely want to provide written updates that would highlight how your work is important and how you're moving in the right direction. You might want to have meetings sometimes, but this should be rather ad hoc meetings when you have questions or discussions. So when you're clear, okay, we need to discuss and align on something, and it's not possible to do via message or an email. In cases when you feel that this alignment is needed on a regular basis, this is maybe where you want to establish a steering committee, so a group of stakeholders who you don't manage closely, but they're still relatively involved in what you're doing. But again, the steering board doesn't have to be necessarily a meeting. It can be a live document where you put your updates and they can provide their feedback within a certain time frame. So saving time is always a great way to keep people satisfied. For the stakeholders you want to keep informed, written updates is the best way. There is no need to have a meeting for status updates. If there are things that you want to show, record a video, don't invite them for another meeting. And for stakeholders who you're monitoring, so bystanders, you probably don't need to do anything extra. As I said, there are probably already certain practices that exist in your company that allow all the other company members to be appraised of what's happening without too much direct interaction. For example, product release email or product review, which can be a meeting, but again, can also be async, by the way. You can make it as a video recording. Everyone can record a small presentation of what they want to share and then send it in a channel or put one video together. These are some ideas. I'll make a short break and ask you if there are any questions, either in our audience on Zoom or in our chats elsewhere.
I have some comments. Thanks
yeah.
for explanation. I have some comments coming from people. Diego de Biaggi Bueno on LinkedIn commented that, returning to the matrix, that sales could be a blocker, and it is true that customer support could be probably a defender. But yeah, this is something that is new for me. Yeah, sales could be probably considered as blockers too, depending if the company maybe it's more B2B, for example.
I am hearing some noise. If someone has the microphone open,
probably
if you can close it, that would be nice. Sales, yeah, can take different roles, like different areas in this matrix, depending on what is your communication with them. They might be a blocker. They might also be a defender, maybe on a bit more powerful side, but still they can be very interested in what you're doing. But I'll guess also the power dynamic is important here to see where maybe they can be a driver as well.
Yeah.
In case when they have a lot of power and they're very interested and you're developing something that has direct impact on their performance.
Totally. And another comment, super quick, was that, the video recording solution is something that Diego also tried, and he considers that it's excellent approach for feature launching, which is something that sometimes it's difficult to onboard to everybody at the same page. So videos, a good thing, based on his opinion too.
Cool. Thanks, Jorge. Yes, video recordings are great. And I see a question from Monica in Zoom. With which group would you recommend having weekly meetings, or would you recommend to do as much as possible async? To be honest, I always recommend to do as much as possible async, because I think there are only positive sides. The negative side, perceived negative side, is that you need to invest time to write this, right? And this is true. However, if you consider the time that you're saving from the actual meeting, which most cases derails and becomes boring and people check out, I don't think you're losing time. At the same time, it helps your thinking. So when you need to formulate things in a written way, it helps you to structure that information and write it well. It makes sure that people will understand you better, because one thing when they're listening to you saying, and then there is a kid running or the cat walking across the monitor and stuff like this, so they're getting distracted all the time. They don't really hear everything you say, but when you're reading it, there is no coming back from this, right? They have to either read and understand, or at least you will not accept that they did not understand. It was written. So generally, yes. Now, is there a group with which you want to have weekly meetings? If you have several drivers, maybe you want to have weekly meetings with them. Is it weekly or every 2 weeks? Depends on the pace of your development or whatever the project is, right? How quickly there are new things that you need to discuss. And should it be a meeting where everyone is there, or that you do separate one-on-ones? Depends also a bit on the dynamics between them, how easy it is to bring everyone together. I think the most important thing, do meetings when you want a discussion. When you have a question to which you want people to hear each other's opinion and have a chance to interactively discuss it. If it's a status update, this really doesn't need to be a meeting. All right. I see there is another question from Rick. Let me come back to this later, Rick. I want to continue, and then we will do more in the Q&A. All right. So we did some already good progress, right? We understood who stakeholders are, mapped them, identified what could be the strategies that we apply to different groups of stakeholders. Now it's time to do it well, to build trust and convince them. And here the next level strategies are coming. First, and very important, let them be heard. And here active listening and negotiation skills is something that will help you. And I cannot stress it enough. If you don't have a good relationship with stakeholders, start by listening to them. This will go a long way. Don't worry that you actually have stuff to say, that they need to understand what you think. This will come after you understand what they are trying to tell you. And for some reason, my presentation is a bit stuck, but now it's back. All right, active listening, several steps. First, hear them out. Just let them speak. Let them explain to you what they think. Help yourself understand and show them that you are listening and understanding by summarizing and asking clarifying questions. This is actually the part that's called active listening. If you want to know more about active listening, there's a lot of materials online, but it's basically being very engaged in the conversation, asking clarifying questions, summarizing. Show them that you understand their worries and that you agree on many things with them, even if you don't agree on everything, or even if you disagree with something. First, explain to them that you do understand where they're coming from, or if not, work a bit on understanding, right? Again, ask clarifying questions, make sure that you build this shared ground. Also, do not ignore the vocabulary clarification. Even though you're working in the same company, it might be that the words you're using for something are not the same. Or when you say the same word, you mean different things. If you realize this is a problem, spend some time to work on this. And I also do recommend and make a written vocabulary that you can also share with everyone. This was, by the way, a recent situation that I witnessed at the client. One of the PMs, I was head of product there, and the PMs several PMs report to me, and one of the PMs started working on the project where it was a lot of many complex interactions with stakeholders. And one of the first things he did, and I think he did very well, is put the glossary. So write down what is meant by different terms that all the stakeholders were using, and making sure that all the stakeholders agreed on this glossary. And after this, he could move on and use these terms, and everyone was able to understand what is meant there. So make sure you share vocabulary. And now, after you listened, after you made sure you understand, ask clarifying questions, start with a common ground, right? Highlight again, where do you agree with the stakeholder? And then move to areas of discussion. Try to also not be very dramatic in the way presenting what's your point, but rather invite the discussion. Ask what would they recommend, what do they think? Explain what is the additional information that they might not know, and ask them to brainstorm together with you how to resolve it. Hopefully, because you did very good active listening at the beginning of the conversation, you will have some good discussion afterwards, and you could come to some agreements. Do not forget to record these agreements and share it so that all the necessary people see it and have it in their record. In some cases, if your stakeholders were not taken care of for a long time, going through this list of 6 points can take you more than one meeting. Maybe the first few meetings you will be just listening and building your understanding, and then at some point you will be able to explain it back, right? Make sure that you understood and have this common ground, and then go to the discussion. What is also adding additional help here is when you're able to understand the needs. And the needs is something that people do not always tell you directly about, but by being attentive, you will start understanding. Generally speaking, stakeholders are worried about the same things that we are worried about, looking good in the eyes of their manager, right? Making sure that what they are getting as a result of their work is seen as good work. If they're a CEO, maybe there is no manager, but there might be shareholders. So they need to also report to someone. How to make them look good? If you're able to help them look good, they will be more lenient to discuss with you some agreements. They care about delivering great results for their department. Again, if you're able to propose something that would not only do good for you, for your development, but also for their department, great results, that's great. And of course, they want to take care of their team. So if their team is overworked because something is not working on the product side, they will keep pushing you to solve this for the team. However, and how to say, if the team is overworked, it might be that you cannot really solve it, right? It might be that there is a big issue with the product that actually needs a lot of work. And here, at least understanding and sharing that you understand their worry, that they want to take care of their team, and you would also like to do everything that's possible, already helps to relieve some pressure and helps you work on some intermediate solutions. So active listening, understanding the needs, and maybe practicing your negotiation skills. And negotiation skills come basically also from understanding the need and then positioning your requests in the light of what you share. There are some good books. Maybe remind me at the end, I will recommend something to read about this topic. The next useful tip is storytelling, which is basically the art of selling. Let's say now you build some common ground, you think you understand. Now your time is to pitch the idea that you have to solve the problems that exist. Very easy very easy approach to think about the storytelling is a famous story arc. Sometimes it's called hero journey. A hero's journey is a little bit more complex, but also actually follows these steps as well. There is more details if you look into hero's journey. But any story, if you think about a Hollywood movie or a book you like, and children's tales, every story that people tell usually follows this structure. There is some exposition, there is a rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. And this is exactly the structure that you can use when you're pitching your ideas. If we talk about product management ideas, what could this be? You start with exposition. You explain some context of the thing you're talking about, right? What is the data that is behind this? Then comes the rising action. You start building up what is the problem And how do we know it's a problem? And what happens if we don't act? So build the tension, right? This is why it's a real problem. If we don't act, then many bad things will happen. Climax is you proposing a solution. You're saying, hey, but you know what's great news? I have a solution. There is XYZ that we should do. And then comes the following action and resolution. You explain what are the expected outcomes and benefits. Very simple, but very efficient structure. The mistake that people often do is that they start talking from the solution. Like they skip the exposition, they skip the raising action, they start talking about the proposed solution without any context. And first of all, your stakeholders or other audience might not understand. Second, they will feel that something is missing and they will not be convinced because you did not build up to your proposal, and it's very important. Good news is that there are many approaches that already make use of this storytelling, and you can also look for examples and look for templates and use it. For example, PR FAQ, so-called fake press release, and FAQ that supports it. And fake press release is meant to show also, here is some problem, and this is how the company solved it, and this is now the great benefits they're getting from this. Solution design documents, concept papers, in some way or the other, follow similar structure. But even if you don't want to or didn't find good examples of PR FAQ, for example, think about these 4 parts and you will be able to build very convincing argumentation. If you want a short formula or you need to do a short presentation, the great phrase that can summarize the story is, we want to do something in order to achieve something, because if we don't, then something else will happen. Again, we're using very similar information, right? We explain what the solution is, but not just in empty vacuum, but we say why we want to do it. So what are the benefits? What's the positive impact? And also what happens if we don't do it? So why is it actually a problem? And what are the negative effects of not implementing the solution? Now, we talked about building your relationship through active listening and understanding, then selling your proposal with a storytelling. What comes next is probably perseverance. It will start giving some positive effects as soon as you start implementing the previous steps, but there will also be some side effects. When you start listening, you will find out that stakeholders will start complaining. And it might seem at some point that they will never stop, like they complain and complain. But I warned you, sometimes it will take several meetings until you reach the discussion point. Sometimes your listening part takes some time, especially this happens when the stakeholders were not heard for a long time. Another thing that might happen, that stakeholders will challenge you and they will try to request more. And they will feel, okay, there is someone who actually cares about us. Maybe we have to ask for more things. In the past, we asked for little and it was not implemented. So maybe you also need to ask for more to have something implemented. So many crazy thoughts can go around in their head. What's important is that you stay on the track and you continue on the path that you planned. Here's where saying no becomes important. So push back and keep on the track that you agreed with them. That's why recording was important. In some ways, it works like with the small kids. When they start growing up, at some point, they start challenging their parents to find out where are the boundaries of what they're allowed to do, right? It doesn't come from a bad place. It actually comes from a place of trust, because the kid knows that the parent will not abandon them just because they're trying out their area. They will help them understand what's possible. Also, your stakeholders, when they start having trust for you, they will also start challenging you, even though it might seem counterintuitive. This is what will happen. And you can help them gain even more trust in you by setting boundaries and sticking to them. So what you do in these cases, hear them out, still have strong opinions, have them loosely held. So if actually they bring new arguments that you should change your mind, then of course you should not be stubborn, but you should be confident and consistent. And don't give up. With time, it will get a little bit easier. And they will stop complaining at some point. Now, you just need to keep it up. Strengthen your position by continuing everything that we discussed, right? Continuous communication, alignment, not exhausting people with your communication, but keeping it in the right channels for the right people. Being an active listener, using storytelling to sell your point, and listening again if that's necessary, and be consistent in everything you do. When you get more trust, you can start also managing expectations. So even before new topics come, be proactive in managing expectations. For example, August is upcoming. Half of my team will be on vacation at different points. So within August, we will not be able to do much. Please bear aware of that. Let's plan accordingly together. Save everyone's time. I think I said this many times, but such valued statement. If you save people's time and they are convinced that you are doing your work well and they know everything they should be knowing, they will be very grateful to you. And the advanced stage is that you learn to anticipate new needs, something that might come, and you act accordingly. Possible examples could be, you know that there are some changes upcoming in your stakeholders team, and then you think, okay, this might have effect on XYZ. How can we in product development support them? How can we make it easier for them? And then you bring this up with your stakeholders, and they definitely will be grateful if you're helping them. This is the end of all my tips. Now let's do a small exercise. Very small. So first of all, the self-reflection. I talked that there are 4 stages. And the first one, you don't know anything, right? And what to do here is to get to know your enemy. So get to know your stakeholders. Second one, you already know them, but you're like, yeah, kind of interacting, but not very efficiently. Here you work on your communication strategies, make sure that you're saving people's times, not wasting it, and at the same time communicating everything that needs to be communicated. And the third stage, you start becoming better at this. Now, right people know the right information. And here you go deeper into building the trust, listen to people, listen to stakeholders, use storytelling, persevere. And eventually you're reaching the great stage where things are working well as an oiled machine, right? Everything is aligned. So which stage are you at, do you think? You can just write a number in the chat. I'm curious to see what's also the difference in our audience. Yeah, to be honest, I think stage number 4 doesn't happen that often. Unfortunately, people tend to change jobs. There can be some changes in the strategy of the company, and then you might need to start over or at least move back to some of the previous stages and rework. But it's always good to continue improving the relationships. All right, I'm very pleased to see that many people are in the stage 3. It's very good stage, still many things to work on, but I think you're already feeling that sometimes you're doing it right and people are happy. There are people who are on stages 1 and 2, but don't worry. I hope now you get some insight about what you can do to move to the next stages. And this is actually my next and last question. What are 3 practical tips, some practices that you will start doing tomorrow? Something that you heard today, or maybe something that came as an idea to you while you were listening to my stories. I'm going to wait because I think that's very interesting, and I'm super interested to hear what you have or read what you have. As a reminder, these are the summaries of the main things we could do. So what are the 3 things you would like to start doing tomorrow?
Okay. So how we should proceed here? Do you want me to wait?
Let's wait for some answers. But
okay.
Jorge, since you're talking, do you want to tell me what are your 3 things?
Do you want information about my meetings?
No, but say it in a way that people would understand. You have to give too many details,
Okay.
But what are 3 small things you might start doing?
We'll probably work on the matrix, because for me, it is very important to communicate the information about the stakeholders and how important those. to people that work directly with me, and not all of them sometimes have enough time to understand, okay, who is, the gorilla in the room, let's say, and this is something that I will probably apply. And then the other thing that I will try to improve is the storytelling, because it is true that everything is about communication, the way how you explain things. You can drag those people from block to drive and find an alignment to there, so you can start focusing on working on those things that make sense, right? So those are the two things I will probably apply. The first, the matrix, actually I love it. And the second one, improve my storytelling, because this is always something that needs to be improved always, right? So we have some comments here.
Thanks, Jorge. Yeah, I can read comments in Zoom, and maybe you could check if there are any other comments in other media.
Okay.
So one is try to reduce the number of meetings and write down the matrix. This is great. I think there's always a good benefit of trying to reduce the number of meetings. I also generally recommend you to do it on a regular basis, maybe once per month. You look at your calendar and think, are all these meetings, especially the recurring ones, still make sense in the ways we work right now? Recurring meetings are big enemies of our calendar and productivity because they become invisible to our eye. We don't pay attention to them anymore, like they always are there. And this is very easy to get trapped into those and then have no time to do anything else. And the matrix is a really good exercise. I think even if you feel like you actually know all the stakeholders, it might be very practical thing to do. And you might realize that some of the stakeholders belong to a different group, or maybe they have changed the group since you started the project. Right, more answers. 1, build the matrix. 2, think of a strategy for communication. 3, better communicate asynchronously. Cool. Another one, incorporate more video recording. More structure of epics in the way we want, in the we want to framework. Yes, by the way, that's a great, like this short storytelling is great for epics, for product. And generally, again, if you think about the epic of as like a bigger initiative, you in some way or the other, you want to explain the whole story there, and this is where the storytelling helps. And all right, and the third was incorporate the power matrix into thought process. Cool, thanks a lot.
I can just say super quick some of the comments that we got from the LinkedIn too. So for example, Taraka from LinkedIn mentioned that she will work on the device communication strategies. Then Nadine Rusinova, she mentioned that she will try to apply, again, device communication strategies and try to build relationships in a better ways with the stakeholders. Then reduce number of meetings, and also summarize technical information for non-technical stakeholders. That's true. I mean, I forgot to mention the vocabulary thing is something that I will also like to implement, because not everybody knows about the terminology that you usually use, and it's your regular day. And last but not least, no, it was the same. Clarify vocabulary. So yeah, vocabulary,
cool.
Communication strategies, and try to build more relationships.
Yes, thanks, Jorge. Andre is reminding me about the books. So the one book about negotiation that I can recommend is called Never Split the Difference. And I think it's a very, very useful book in any communication you have, because effectively you're always selling and or negotiating whatever communication you have. Also, not only stakeholders, but your team and maybe even outside of work. It talks about in like more detailed on how you actively listen first, and then how you build up from there to find the common ground. I think one also great advice I got from this book is start negotiating with having your best scenario in your head, rather than a pessimistic, like something you would agree on, because this makes you more confident to push a bit. And this is often also very helpful. I think that's actually the one book that I want to recommend. I'll think for a second more and tell you if I have more. I remember that there was a question from Rick. Is it better to cater to specific preferences or better to set precedents in a more standard manner? We often have stakeholders that prefer email only, but sometimes it's best to talk in person to clean up the tone. So I do think that when you start building the trust, you should definitely go with people's preferences. So do things that they would like. Next, if you feel like there is a strong reason that you want to move from one way of communication to the other, start building some bridges. For example, if you want to move from async email communication to a meeting, maybe start with video recordings as the intermediate step, right? You can still send it by email. Maybe you still send a short summary of that people who don't want to watch, they can read it. But then you show what are the benefits of some live presentation, right? That's, again, the tone exactly. And maybe they feel that they can understand more, and hopefully they feel like they have some questions that they would love to ask you when you were presenting, but then they realize, okay, I wasn't possible to ask questions, I wasn't there. Maybe we do have a meeting. So I would try to build some bridges. At the same time, from what you wrote, I'd say maybe a meeting is actually not needed, and maybe just video recording is already solving for what you need. So if it's about making sure that the presentation is done in the right way, it's not about the discussion, then again, just the recording probably is a great solution. Right, thanks everyone for adding the title. Okay. Could you please repeat this shareholders part? I don't think that the shareholders part was very big. I think what's important when we have a CEO as one of the important stakeholders is to think also who do they report to. Even if CEO is the head of the company and they don't report to anyone, depending, of course, on what company it is, they might have some people who gave them money, right? And this could be individual people who make the board. This could be venture capital companies who again make the board, or this could be shareholders. And shareholders could be a small group, or it could be a big group if it's a public listed company, right? And this all helps you build the like thinking about this helps you build the empathy towards this person. What are they worried about? What is the risk that they are taking with certain things? And this helps you better navigate your communication. Also there are some nice examples in Never Split the Difference book on how you should think what is the person is actually afraid of. And this might not be something that they are telling you, but something that is behind in their motivation. What else? And yeah, also for CEO, CEO can be a founder sometimes, right? But it also could be a person who is hired by the founders, and then they effectively also report to founders. And founders, in addition to wanting their product earn money and stuff, they also have a lot of identity connection with the product usually. And this is also like, it can be very emotional and personal. So this can also should be taken into consideration. All right, I see another question, and I think we have another 3, maybe 4 minutes for questions. So please write more. I'm currently interviewing and I get this question a lot. How do you manage a difficult stakeholder? How would you go about answering a question like this? So of course, the way I would go in the interview might not necessarily be the best way for you. I think that's also a danger of just taking out questions from the interview separately, as everything that you answer builds up your portfolio, right? And you should not be giving answers that don't fit together. However, if I were to answer the question about difficult stakeholders, I would actually more or less follow this 4 stages of how do you develop the relationship. So I would say, first, I would understand where is the stakeholder positioned according to other stakeholders, what's the stake in my product, why are they a stakeholder, right? Then I would make sure or figure out what communications has been done in the past. There is a reason why someone became a difficult stakeholder. Stakeholders are not difficult by default. They become difficult because they're not happy with something. So then I want to understand what they're not happy about, would listen actively, right? Figure out what's the common ground, see if we have some disagreement and work on those disagreements. I would also make sure that things are recorded so that there's no coming back from certain things, or at least it's clear for everyone why we took certain decisions, and then continue building this relationship. If people in the interview tell you that the stakeholder is difficult because of the personality, then I would say I would still do the same. However, I would pay even more extra attention to being very transparent to other participants of the process. Because the challenge with difficult stakeholders is that they can throw you under the bus in some, like difficult personalities. Sorry, I won't say challenge with difficult personalities is that they might throw you under the bus in some situations when it's good for them. And you want to prevent this. And this means you want to have very good also written communication and recordings of everything that you will be doing so that you can prove your position, your standing. Yeah, that is my take on this. Hamad, was it similar to what you had in mind, or are you answering in a very different way when you're asked in the interview?
Okay, I think we'll have 3 minutes left. I don't see any particular questions coming from LinkedIn that I missed. I have a comment coming from LinkedIn. Karima Bandavat, I hope I pronounced it correctly, said, "Thank you so much for fantastic session, Viktoria." I can say the same. So yeah, actually it is very interesting. The approach that you propose here. It is not only for product managers, I would say that is for every person that is starting working in a new company, I would say, or a new team, where you need to more or less have a better, clear idea about how is more or less, what is the position, the power, who will you like to, be friend with in order to get things done. So yeah, for me, 100% it's not just about product, it's about, people, and this could be applied on different, scenarios. So thanks for this session. Oh, Hama replied, slightly different, but thanks for your response. I'll take it on board.
Yeah, welcome, Hamad. I hope it was food for thought. As I said, there might be that your response is also a bit different, and it's fine.
Okay, so if you don't mind, Victoria, I will take over the presentation and I will explain a little bit more about us as a company before we wrap up. I think it's 7:28, right? We have 2 minutes left. Bill, if you don't mind, can you share this in the everyone channel while I do the speech? The rubber speech, the comment that you just post. Thank you so much. Okay, so again, thank you so much, Victoria, for your presentation. Can you see my screen, right?
Yeah.
It's UA here. So as I mentioned before, we're product people. We work in different ways, but in order to encourage and push the product community, but us as a company, we help the other companies and their products in different ways. And those are the 3 cases where we expect to help them, right? When you need to hire a product manager to cover different urgent necessities, for example, a parental leave, and this is something that happens, right? Because such is life. And then you have product coach consultancy there, coming from us, from our product leadership team, for every difficult decision that you need to a second opinion. This is more or less where we can, help you as a product coach. And last but not least, product discovery lead, where you need to figure it out from scratch, that you have a problem that you would like to start solving in your company, and you don't know where to start when the discovery. This is more or less the scenario where we can help you with a lot, since we have people experiencing delivery, but also, and most importantly, in discovery for this case. So those are the 3 scenarios where we can help, your team grow, and you need a product manager. You need the product coach to train your own product team, to reach the next level, to upskill, and last but not least, to find your next big feature for your product, by hiring a product discovery lead that could help you to figure out what's exactly the thing that your product needs. Here you can see some of the comments that we've got from our clients. If you want to check most of those comments, we have more in the website. And those are the clients that we are working on. Some of them we're working with them right now, and some others it's past clients from different industries. As you can see, for example, we have people from Utopia, World Health Organization, Sastrify. So we have a very portfolio of clients that we have worked with, and all of them have. If you need or need to know how we help those companies to get to the next level, you can see our website where we explain the pro cases, and you can learn more about those. Some B2C clients at Zalando, to Scout, 24, We Share, One Football, and Douglas, myself, I'm working there. And this is something that probably is very, very interesting for those that are looking for, okay, we would like to start working with pro people, but we would like to know more or less who you are internally, right? So first, we have more than 70% of retention with customers. Most of them come from renewal and after the initial engagement, or some of them come from recommendations from our current product, from our current customers that we are working with right now. This is for me the most important part. We are around 40 product leaders and product managers, which 56 of them are women in the team. We appreciate, and we try to make the equilibrium between men and women here at the team. And we also have 60% of the team in leadership team. And if you are looking for a company that matters about those kind of things, product people is the right one. So yeah, we'll split between half of the team, as you can see. In the picture, it's us. I mean, right in the middle, and I think Viktoria is top left, and Tila is around, I don't know. Yeah, top left too. As you can see, we are product managers coming from different parts all around the world. We would like you to have in our team the product people onigiri is our symbol, and if you are looking for a product role, maybe you can be part of this team picture too. And this is where we have everything about our product offers, job offers. And please check the website. We have there the team section where you will find directly the link in case you are interested on a product role. And also we have the operations roles as SDR, and also we are looking for press release and social media community manager. And well, this one goes to skip it basically because we already did that. So thank you so much for coming. I think we are 3 minutes over time, but we did it good. There is a question, right? I think it was Solina. Do you want to reply to this super quick, Viktoria, or we just go assign?
Sure. What is the question?
So, I know it wasn't Olin. Okay, it wasn't a question. It was just like, thank you very much, Viktoria. It was very insightful. So, okay, even better, right? So it's not a question. It's
welcome.
Like, right. That's great. So yeah, Monica said the same. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for joining today. As I mentioned, if you want to know more about the company, please look, Google it and check the getpropeople.com website. More about the hiring section. The same, go to the website. And if you are on LinkedIn, just go there and follow us because we are very active there. Thank you so much. I think that we're going to stop